the already big variance that we have. Because in order to fill that gap, not building principals and their office supplies and equipment. The program component is the teaching part. That makes up the largest percentage of the budget. And the capital component is buildings and grounds. Debt service is included in the capital component. So what is the administrative cap? Administrative cap is the administrative component of the budget divided by a combination of the administrative component and the program component. What they are saying here is if the budget is defeated, the administrative component of the contingent budget cannot exceed last year's administrative component. So what is permitted under a contingency budget? Only ordinary contingent expenses are permitted if the budget is defeated by voters. The Board of Education has flexibility to make some changes with limitation. The board, let me emphasize this, the Board of Education has the right to make some changes to what should be included within the contingent budgets, but with limitation. And everything has to be run with council because this is a contingent budget, has to be adhered to throughout implementation. And it's an area that is heavily audited. So what is allowable under a contingency budget? Expenses that are necessary to provide the minimum services legally required to operate and maintain school buildings and the district educational program, and also preserve the property of the district and ensure the health and safety of students and staff. What is allowable? Legal expenses, including any borrowing that we had in the past, leases that has been voter approved, court orders, including orders of the Commissioner of Education, other legal obligations, including Social Security, payroll taxes, or garnishment, are all things that we have to comply with, even under a contingency budget. Pre-existing contractual obligations and expenditures for payment to charter schools. So our obligation to charter schools, if they bill us, we've got to pay. Other allowable expenses include interscholastic athletics. In the past, when we used to talk about austerity budget, schools interscholastic athletics used to be excluded. No more. We cannot eliminate interscholastic athletics in a contingency budget. Not intramurals, but interscholastic athletics. Transportation to regular schools within the established limit. We currently transport private and parochial school students to schools within a 15-mile radius, and special education students within a 50-mile radius. That stays. You cannot cut transportation for private and parochial students because the budget is defeated. Textbooks and transportation to private and parochial schools must stay within the budget. Expenses for membership for board members, conference expenses, district share of BOCES services, which we just approved today, and use of school building for school-connected purposes. Some of the other expenses that are permitted are classroom material to ensure uniformity. And this is a key area because if you're going to buy supplies for a classroom, and because you are on contingent budget, you want to change the kind of supplies that you purchase. If it benefits the student more to have uniformity, we have to stick with that. Summer school expenses to advise voters concerning school matters, general fund support for school services. That doesn't occur here, but if the general fund support the school lunch program, that can also continue under a contingency budget. Emergency repairs of district facilities, I mentioned that previously. Programs such as art, music, band, orchestra, physical education, elective services for students based on their IEPs, speech, counseling, psychological services, OTPT, and all the other related services for students based on their IEPs. Teachers, administrators, superintendent, and other positions that require SED certification. District treasurer, district clerk, internal claims auditor can all receive raises under a contingent budget. Non-instructional salaries, non-instructional employees who are within a collective bargaining agreement can also receive raises. Expenses that are not permitted include salary increases for management, confidential employees, civil service employees not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. Not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. However, this is an area that is also subject to review by the board and council. Capital construction, non-emergencies, school bus purchases, we don't have that here, and multi-year bus leases. Most equipment are not permitted, and rental of equipment. The use of school buildings and grounds by outside organizations, except where there's no identifiable cost, is not permitted. This is an area that I would like all of us to look at because it does happen and it has to be strictly adhered to. So we look at 3 scenarios. How much will it cost per $100 of assessed value if we choose one option over the other? For the Amityville School District, we have 2 tax jurisdictions. We have Oyster Bay, which is Nassau County, and we have the town of Babylon, which is in Suffolk County. In the town, in Nassau County, in order to apportion the taxes, you have to look at other factors. Nassau County is one of the few counties in the whole state where they still use adjusted base proportion to apportion taxes. So for the tax levy of 1.962, if we are going to remain within the levy cap, the total amount that we can raise by taxation is $1.962 million. And how do you apportion it between Babylon and the town and Nassau County? In Nassau County, it is based on the adjusted base proportion. What percentage goes to homeowners? What percentage goes to class 2, which is co-op and condos, utilities is class 3, and businesses is class 4. For our purpose, what I want you to look at is the assessed value of a single family home in the Nassau County section of the district. Nassau County assesses homes at 0.1%, 0.1 of 1%. In other words, it is 1/1000 of the assessed value. So what you see here is a typical home within the school district. It is assessed at $362 per $100 of an assessed value. The current tax rate for Nassau County section of the district is $2,521.622 per 100 of assessed value. So for a typical home with an assessed value of $362, the way you determine the actual taxes that this is an actual home that I picked on the internet, is you take the 362 and multiply it by the tax rate. You divide this by 100, so it becomes 3.62 and multiply it by the tax rate. So for this home, the school taxes is $9,128. Now, if we do not pierce the cap, the taxes, which is the amount that was calculated, the tax cap calculation has to be divided. This $1.9 million has to be divided between Oyster Bay and town of Babylon. And how do you divide it? You take the full value of all the properties in both the town of Oyster Bay and town of Nassau County, and then find the percentage that will even it up and find the percentage. In this case, the Nassau County part of the district pays about 32% of the taxes, and the other piece, which is about 68%, is paid by the town of Babylon. So if we stay within the cap at 3.077% increase, this home is paying $9,129 will get additional tax increase of $268. If we were to pierce the cap and keep Northeast open for a total of $1.7 million, this is coming from the last presentation. This number here also has to be divided between the town of Babylon and the town of Oyster Bay. The increase from here to here, which is if Northeast were kept open, will be $251 additional to the taxes that this homeowner will pay, for a total of $520. How does it translate in terms of monthly payment? If the cap were not pierced, this will be $22 per household per month, an additional $20 98 cents if we were to pay for Northeast to keep Northeast open.
Excuse me, Ms. Buatsi, just one quick question. Just for clarification, for option number 2, from the budget presentation that was done on April 10th. If what we're not talking about here is the other $2.8 million that includes all the other cuts that were talked about. So that's just one thing that is just not clear up there.
Okay, that's where I was going to go to. That's a very good point.
It does not include all the cuts from April 10th from administration,
Correct.
reduction in instructional programs, reduction in BOCES, transportation. All of that is not part of number 2.
That's not part of number 2. That will be included in option number 3. The increase in option number 3 is a combination of option 1, option 2, and the $2.8 million.
No, option 1 would be
the regular.
If we don't pierce it, that means that would be the 2.8 million of the information that was provided last budget presentation of all the different cuts, as well as the closing of Northeast.
Correct. Thank you. So for option number 3, what we are adding on is all the positions that we were eliminated during the April 10th presentation, adding up to $2.8 million. So the 1.7 here plus the 2.8 adds up to the $4.6 million. And that will give the homeowner for next year a tax levy increase of $928. And the annual increase is $408, and the monthly increase is $34. I want to pause for any questions that anyone has before I go to the town of Babylon.
Does any board members have any questions at this point in time? If you want to go back, Ms. Santos, go back to that page, so therefore you can ask your question. Just get the mic and get the mic close to your mouth. Thank you.
I have a question on page 9.
I'm going to go there.
Okay, I just have a question. I remember before when we were in austerity that we were not allowed to do interclassical athletics.
Yes.
We had a fundraise for that.
Correct.
I remember that. When was that changed?
More than 10 years ago.
About 10 years.
Yes, because the state stole the burden on students.
I agree there.
Yes.
I agree.
So I do have another question.
Sure.
These are all listed as allowable expenses under contingency budget.
Correct.
But even though they are allowable expenses, does not mean that they would occur. So this is my question. It says they're allowable expenses under contingency budget.
Correct.
Is there anything on the list, on that list of allowable expenses that if it went to a contingency budget, that we would be allowed to cut? Because if you look at this list really does more than what we already have here.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, to me, so if we go to, if the budget is voted down and we go to a contingency budget, what are we supposed to, potentially consider as a discussion to cut? If these are allowable, but they're not required. So what on the list, and you don't have to answer now, but what on the list is allowable, but we can?
Let me just.
That's what's not clear.
Yes. Let me just focus on conferences. Even though conferences are permitted, it does not mean that you have to go to the full amount. We can scale back on it.
Right, but I understand that, but a lot of the things that are listed up there are expenses that will not come up to $1 million. Because when we talk about conferences, we're talking about membership, they will add up over time. So from the list of allowable expenses, if we went to a contingency budget because the budget did not pass, what were you looking at to potentially cut?
New equipment.
But is there anything in our budget right now that we have down for new equipment? Can we cut that out now? I mean, is there anything in our budget right now?
Actually, there were no new equipment
Right.
in the budget.
So-
and in fact, all the equipment that we purchase are through BOCES, and they are multi-year leases. So it's very, very, very limited.
So based on what we can cut, like new equipment, we're not purchasing any new equipment, so there's nothing there. Non-essential maintenance items, I think we've gone down the bare minimum. So if we cut anything else, there won't be anything for maintenance to do. And we have some consultant services, which we would have to cut. There's no new capital projects that are taking place. So in terms of, what we're allowed to cut, there's nothing there to cut from. So it goes back to that list right now in terms of allowable cuts. What are we talking about?
This budget in itself, it's a bare minimum budget. That's what we are saying. The budget that we presented to the board, has been trimmed down considerably. And if you recall, we went back to it, and in fact, we did cut another $1 million before we presented it to you. So all the equipment non-essential equipment were already eliminated from the budget before we brought it to the board. So it is a bare minimum budget as it stands.
Right, I had another, I wasn't finished.
Oh, hold on a second. So, all right, go ahead, Ms. Santos, and then Mr. Heller, but just when you speak you have to speak close to the mic because if people are listening from home, they can't hear you too well. So let Ms. Santos ask her question and then I will go back to them. Okay, thank
We're
you.
on page 10. You have a general fund support for school food services. Right, you know that we have breakfast and lunch. Does that include breakfast and lunch for the kids?
Yes,
Thank you.
but what it means, what this means really is that in some school districts, every year, the general fund budgets an amount to support the school lunch program. That's what we are talking about. But here it is not needed because we are a CEP school district and because we are a CEP community eligibility program. Because we are a community eligibility program, we receive one of the highest reimbursement. So the school lunch program in this district is actually self-sustaining.
Thank you.
If I can add to what I believe, Ms. Johnson, the question was, based on this list, it doesn't seem to be enough expenses here to get the contingency. The major expenses in our budget are salaries and benefits. Those would have to be cut to get the contingencies. These alone would not do it. This is a list of other things that can be done or could not be done based on which page you're looking at. But certainly salaries and benefits has to be cut. And I believe Ms. Boazzi has already indicated that these from her list in previous presentations have been cut to get to these levels. But certainly more of a cut can be made to these areas to get you down to contingency.
So that's the question that I was going at, because my concern, if we go to contingency budget, right now, if we don't pierce the cap, then that means that there's $2.8 million of different cuts that we've already identified, which includes a lot of staff, right? Then it also includes the potential of closing Northeast if it was option number one, right? Which is in order to hold on to the $4.6 million. If we did that, this district would, in my opinion, be devastated and would take a long time to recover. Now, if we go to a contingency budget, then you're cutting the 2 million that's already there, plus closing Northeast, and then cutting even more staff?
Yes.
How is this district going to recover? And that's,
Ms. Johnson, I do have a question. So can we just explain what is the issue with possibly moving the $1.3 million that the voters had approved and that's set aside for the bathrooms? What's the issue with trying to regain those funds?
there's no issue. When we met on it back in March, we only addressed the moving of the money from the capital projects back to the capital reserves. We did not address the $1.3 million that was moved from general funds to capital projects. If that's something that we want to do, we can't do it on this particular vote, but we'd have to do another like special budget, another special vote in order to move that back. So that's something that also could be done. But once again, I believe it was stated that the $1.3 million, if it was approved by the community to move back, it goes back into the general fund.
Yes.
But it would not necessarily bring back staff.
Right. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if we can bring back $1.3 million and just have it in the general fund, it can help pay for other things, not necessarily bring back staff.
Right, but it has to be voted on.
Right. So maybe that's something we should really consider.
It is something that won't be on this budget, but it would have to be part of another special, it'll have to be a special election, or not election, but a special budget.
It would have to go on as a referendum.
It cannot go on this particular budget, because it cannot, because it's missed the deadline. Now, my understanding, it missed the deadline in order to go on this particular ballot. So it would have to be another budget.
It would have to be next year's?
No, we could do something like. in
Okay,
2 or 3 months.
like a special election.
Right, exactly.
But I have to interject and say this. I think there should be the understanding that if there's going to be a special election to do that, we would need the architect to resize the project. And that would be an additional cost to the district.
Can they pause the project? The project that we have, we're not asking them to resize it. We're asking them to pause it until we're in better financial times. Is that a possibility?
The board and the community voted on a specific line. To undo it, we have to go back to scale back, because what the community voted on called for a specific size of project. If that is not what the community want, and they want to reverse it, they have to go back and resize the project and reduce the scope. And what I'm saying is that if that is done and we have to go back, we will incur additional costs. So what I'm saying is that the $1.3 million that we are talking about could come up a little lower, because they are going to charge us for all the work that they are going to do. That's what I'm saying.
So we get back $1 million.
They've already,
Let Ms. Kawasi finish. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. They've already given us a bill for about $345,000 for the work they've done here today. So to undo that, they'll go back and charge
We
you.
talked.
All right,
And
so
to redo it.
Excuse me, so board members, please remain quiet as Ms. Kawasi is answering Trustee Leon's question. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, I just didn't want any surprises when we decide to reverse what we did and the money isn't as high as we had anticipated. That's what I wanted to bring forth right now, because for the work that they've submitted the plans and spec to the state, and they've given us a bill for $345,000. if we were to hold another referendum and tell them that, okay, we want you to scale back, and they have to scale back on the project, they'll come back and charge you. And then you want to develop the plans for the new scope. So it entails a lot, and I wanted everybody to be, I don't know the specific amount that they'll charge, but I know that it will require some funding. And so the 1.3 will not come back to us as a whole 1.3. I just wanted you to be aware of that.
That's understood, understand that. But under, would this project even be able to go forward under a contingency budget?
Yes, because it was not in this year's budget. It
Okay.
was in the 23-24 budget. What I just spoke about, calling for the halting of new project, is project that are in this year, capital construction project that are in the 24-25 budget.
Okay, and the reason why I asked this is because on slide 12, it says expenses not permitted, capital construction projects, non-emergencies. That is not what this is. Is that what you're saying?
No, let me clarify. What I'm saying is that that project is already in the pipeline. So it has nothing to do with the upcoming budget. It's not a new program. whatsoever.
And that the law don't consider it an emergency.
Just kind of speaking to the mic, because if people listening out, they can't hear you. Thank you.
Right, I understand that it's not a new project, but at the same time, I don't consider the bathrooms an emergency project.
I do think, I think we all have to look at the scope of that work. It is not just bathrooms. There are so many health and safety issues that this entails, and you just have to take a walk through the middle school to see some of the health and safety concerns in those buildings. So I would very much encourage you to come if you want to.
All right, so I think that when we get to that point, then that's
Right.
what we can address that.
Okay, so the last slide that I wanted to talk about is the impact of this, the three options on a homeowner in the town of Oyster Bay. It's very
Town of
similar.
Babylon, I mean.
In the town, sorry, the town of Babylon. So you can see that for a home that is
Ms.
assessed.
Boissy, just bring the mic closer because of.
Yeah, is that better? Thank you. For a home that is assessed at 3940, the current tax rate in the town of Babylon is 207.9147. And that yields a school tax of $8,191,000. So if we go with option one, which is stay within the cap, the increase that you're going to see is 255.08. If we go to option two, keep Northwest open, the tax levy will be Northeast open, the tax levy will be $8,673. For an increase, you add this money, the tax levy increase, to the amount that it will cost to keep Northeast open, $1.7 million. And then you have to apportion it between the town of Babylon and town of Oyster Bay. And as I said before, the town of Babylon pays about 68% of the taxes. And that is how you get to these numbers, to get to the tax rate and multiply it by the assessed value to get the amount of increase that you anticipate if we were to keep Northeast open. The same goes with option three, if we put back the $2.8 million that we had discussed earlier.
So, Ms. Fritz, do you have a question? Just bring the mic close, please.
Yeah, real close.
This doesn't include if we transfer the kids from one school to the.
No, this is.
So
just-
could you do
If we
There
transfer,
should be another option.
yes, if we transfer, as we said the last time, if we transfer the kids from northeast to northwest, we will be transferring a lot of costs over to northwest. But there will be another delta that we have to deal with. If you recall from the prior presentation, what we came up with was a delta of $892,000
Right.
that we still have to go and cut in order to balance the budget.
Right.
So either way, we will still be in that. Thank you. Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Hillen.
So I think, one of the things that really hasn't been mentioned, and maybe to clarify for some of the audience and our community residents, is that, so we had a half-day pre-K up until 2020. We worked real hard to go to a full-day pre-K. We took an entire building that did house 2 different grades at Northeast and made it 1 grade. And the anticipation was that the program, the pre-K program, would grow. Well, unfortunately, it hasn't grown. If anything, it's actually gotten smaller. So it does represent a tremendous amount of cost, but the facts that haven't been really spelled out is that what is the current enrollment 23-24? What was it in 2021? So we have a projection that if the enrollment is going down, we are spending a tremendous amount of money to keep 1 building open. We're probably talking about, we said, well, if we move it to Northwest, we probably have 6 classrooms. Well, right now you have something like 8 students in a pre-K classroom that has a teacher and a teacher's aide. That's a tremendous amount of money to be spending on this 1 program at this time when we know we've got all of these rather difficult situations that we're facing. We talk about closing schools. Every school district around us has closed schools. They've closed buildings. If we talk about what our enrollment in Amityville schools was in 2019 versus what the enrollment is now, it's gone down. So that alone justifies the possible loss of some staff. I'm not saying I want to cut staff. That's not the point. I'd love to have classroom sizes at 14 to 17 kids. But in this particular situation, it's not a reality. We have to go to 27 kids in a classroom. We have to. It's like, this is what we had years ago. And fortunately, we got through it and we decided to change that around, have smaller classroom sizes, add teachers' aides and everything else, but it's not working out. So, I mean, if you closed Northeast and then you looked at BOCES or some other programs to come in and take over Northeast, maybe for a year or 2 until we could get whatever, 3 years, maybe, whatever it is to get it back online, you're talking about 1.7 that can go back into the, help offset our problems here, possibly allow other programs so that, so the children that we really want to help in these early stages, it's the foundation of education, pre-K, I believe it. I believe it's very important. I voted to have it. I wanted to have it. But does it mean, is it fair to take away from the other children who've been in the district also for X amount of years? We're talking about taking away programs, closing classroom, different clubs and things like that. So does, 8 students in a classroom with a teacher and a teacher's aide, really justify the keeping that program open right now when we're really taking away from other programs? Again, enrollment has gone down, which means classroom sizes have gotten smaller, which means possibly you have to reduce staff. It's a business thing, okay? Do I want to do it? No. But I'm more of a businessman, and I understand that, after being in my own business for 48 years and never spending 1 day in the red, it's very difficult for me to comprehend a lot of things that happen. I just want everybody to be aware of all these facts, that, if we have to make a hard decision, there's a reason for it. It's not because we want to do something to take away from our children or to hurt any of our programs. it's a matter of, dollars and cents and keeping the buildings and our staff, what we have of it, happy and also promoting, growth. So just everybody needs to hear some of that. That's all.
So thank you, Mr. Heller. I don't, so I hear what you're saying. I'm also thinking about the other side, which is the $2.8 million that to me, it's not just Northeast. It's the other $2.8 million when we're talking about losing, 2 deans, one for middle school, high school, director of E&L, assistant principal, clerical positions, attendance teacher, instructional coaches, the list goes on. To me, that's more devastating than the closing of the building. And so if we kept Northeast open, I mean, if we kept Northeast open, if we housed Northeast, we still would be losing this 2.8 million in terms of programs, people, transportation. To me, that's concerning as well. To me, that portion there will be even harder for us as a district to recover from. That's number one. When it comes to the whole concept of Northeast, I just think there needs to be more time to really look at, and we just don't have that time. If we say that we're going to restructure Northeast, well, what does that look like? We have no idea what revenue that we would have coming in definitely, and how long would that last, hypothetically. We have no idea if we went back to half K, pre-K, or if we brought the first grade back to Northeast. I'm just throwing this out. I'm not saying we're going to do this. What does it look like? We have not looked at all the different options that we could do at that Northeast building. Trust me, I'm a taxpayer. I pay my taxes. I don't want my taxes to go up. I really do not want them to go up. But on the same token, my concern is that if we lose everything with that $2.8 million, how will this district recover? That's my biggest concern. And so that's just me. That's just how I feel. And it would give us time to relook at what can we do with Northeast. What else? There's already controls that have been put in place that's looking at the way spending has occurred, the way that things have occurred, and why we got into this particular situation. Those are in place. We're waiting for the forensic auditor to give their report as well. If we go and we close Northeast and we let go of everything with that 2.8, what will happen to the school? If we go to a contingency budget and we have to cut even more, what's going to happen? That's me.
If I may, Madam President.
Yeah.
So if we can just sort of look at a little bit of our history, where we are, and the possibilities of where we can go. When we look at the levy history in the Amityville School District, there were years when there was a 0% levy. There were years where we did not go up to the allowable tax cap. And so as a result, whenever you do not maximize that tax cap, it lowers your tax cap each year. So here we are at 3.077 with the reality that we cannot function at an optimum level and provide the essential services to our student scholars at that tax cap. At that tax cap, we cannot keep the services that our student scholars need. At that tax cap, our fiscal score does not have a greater propensity to rise because at present it is at 70. It will impact our Moody rating. It will impact our lending ability. So as a community, we need to think about the implications that the decisions that we're going to make and how it's going to impact us being able to move forward. So we're looking at, under the tax cap, a total loss of about 51 jobs. We're looking at, under the tax cap at Northeast alone, about 39 jobs. We're looking at families who need to seek out other early childhood opportunities, whereas we're looking at ways we can increase the enrollment. Now, what are some ways to increase the enrollment? We had marquee signs, they did mass mailings, they walked the streets, they distributed flyers, they backpacked, they put it in the virtual backpack, Parent Square, Instagram, Facebook. Right now, we're at about under 100, with about 50 of those incomplete applications. We realize that our parents need early drop-off. We realize that our parents need late pickup. And one of the reasons that the program is under enrolled is because parents cannot leave their jobs at 3 o'clock to go pick up the children, and they may not have a village or family surrounding them to be able to pick the child up for them or be home when the bus brings them home. So we realize there are compounding factors that is impacting the enrollment and the efficiency at Northeast. Now, we have been in conversation about a 4410 and what it looks like. And today, in our most recent conversation, we realized that perhaps seeking a 4410 through our own authority as a district may not be the wisest step, because it's going to take a while to get approved. We were looking at accelerated approval, and it's a reimbursement whereby we would have to put the money up front and wait, and we're not in a position to put the money up front and wait.
Can you just explain what a 40?
Yes, it's a pre-K program that serves the needs of students who have special needs. And so we looked at another option around renting, leasing. There are 2 agencies that we have conversed with about their interest in leasing space to house their own 4410 programs. And there are regulatory pricing that perhaps would allow us to charge a set rate per square foot. Our classrooms are 789 square feet. Let's just say hypothetically, if we were able to get $25 a square foot times 789 square feet, that's $19,000, maybe $500, times 7 classrooms, that may be around $239,000 per month, times 12 months. If we were to compute that, that brings us very close to maybe $1.6 million. We are entertaining a walkthrough of one of these agencies this week to come and see, is this facility doable? Could it serve your needs? Could we cohabitate in the same building? We realize that time is not on our side, but we realize that we do have people who are totally in on trying to acquire a solution to allow the school to be the beacon of light that our families are looking for it to be. At every community meeting that we attended, we continue to hear the pressing need for us to reconsider Northeast as a viable educational institution for our earliest scholars. And so we're putting the energies in to do all that we can to see what type of solutions we can bring to this end. Now, there are other logistics that we will have to work through that we are still learning about as we go. And I know that this board cannot approve or adopt a budget based on a hypothetical. So then what does that mean for us as a community? That means that if we were to look at what we can retain, what we can build upon, how we can reclaim our district, reset our district for $1.01 or $1.02 a day, I know that there is a trust factor. I realize that we have been through a real life challenge, and we are still perhaps wondering and questioning some realities of where we are. At some point, we're going to have to launch ahead if we're going to get out of the place where we are. Make the accountabilities, the adjustments, the modifications as we go. But we cannot go backwards. If our school district suffers a contingent budget, that is an additional $2 million that must be cut. If you perceive the district has been gutted with the 51 positions and other programs and services that are on this presentation that we shared over the last 2 weeks, it's going to be $2 additional million attached to that. Yes, they say interscholastic sports is allowed, but the reality of that is we're not going to be able to allow that because we're going to need $2 million that has to come from somewhere. To hear our scholars talk about the clubs, even to put it on the paper was gut-wrenching for us. And if we can somehow collectively come together between $1.01, $1.02 if you're in Oyster Bay, and it's going to vary a little bit, but for 1 year, if we can just consider that, next year, we wouldn't have to pierce the cap. At some point, we'll be able to level out. And I'm just asking that we consider all of the options and look at the glass half full as to what we can retain, what we can keep as we continue to review what is before us. Thank you, Madam President.
I don't want to speak because I get too emotional, but I have to. I was never so proud as I was when I was attending the community meetings. We had our 3 communities, South Amityville, North Amityville, and East Massapequa. The 3 communities came out and said, do not do away, do not close Northeast. I was so proud of our community. And it's just something that you guys all know me. I've been around for a while, but I'm very emotional about our kids and our foundation. That's our business. Our family business is foundation. And pre-K and kindergarten are our foundation. If we don't have the right foundation, if we don't have the right equipment, the right things being done as a foundation, we all crumble. The building will crumble, the education will crumble. And while I'm still alive, I'm not gonna allow that. I'm sorry. It's just me. I'm speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for the board. I'm a taxpayer. I've been a taxpayer here for 70 years. My kids all went to this school from kindergarten, because there was no pre-K at the time, from kindergarten to 12th grade, and the 3 of them are professionals. We have the right education. Don't let us destroy it. Don't destroy it. Please, work with us. And the one thing that we have to do is talk to our elected officials. They have to change the way that education is funded. The way they do it is by property taxes. I'm sorry, do not rush me.
No, Ms. Santos, I want you to definitely finish what you have to say, but I also want to allow, community members to make any
Okay.
comments. Thank you.
Okay. To my point, I would never, ever vote to get rid of Northeast, ever. They can do it, all you need is 4 votes, but it's not gonna be one of mine. Because I would never allow that, and I would never allow all these staff members to be out. I'd rather go on austerity, and I'd rather pay my taxes. I would pay it. I would pay taxes for somebody else if I had the money. And that's why I buy a lotto every year. So when I win it, I'm gonna donate the money to the school. Now, please, I'm finished, but please do not allow us to destroy our district. Do not allow us, please. Work with us. Help us.
Does any of the board members have anything to say before I open up to comments?
Yeah, one question for Ms. Palazzi. What would the cost of our insurance, how would it be impacted if we rented Northeast out to another organization?
We will check with our insurance company, of course, and they are the ones who will tell us what the impact will be. Of course, if there is going to be another organization renting our facility, they will have to factor it into our insurance. But on the other hand, we'll be collecting rent. So that will be built into the rent or the lease agreement that we have with that organization.
Any other board questions? At this point in time, we'll take any, I know it's not on here, but I'll do anyway, take any comments about the budget presentation.
Nakia Wolf, 100 Avalon Court. Good evening, everyone. One of the things that it is that I was actually happy to hear was that there was an acknowledgement on the other side from especially Dr. Talbot as it relates to the fact that it is that we are having to move forward when we know that there are some issues with trust. And that's extremely important to make sure that it is that we acknowledge. There are some other things that, you know, we also have to end up doing, and we'll find out more once the audit is done. To go to the point where it is that we're talking about closing the school, and I made this point yesterday, we've already cut staff. And so we've already addressed the problem that exists when we're talking about the fact that there were whatever, 8 kids or whatever in the classroom. That wasn't even going to be the issue. So that wasn't going to be the issue going forward. The class sizes were going to be higher than what it is that they were. So that in of itself still is going to put us in a situation where even if we got rid of Northeast, we still weren't going to realize any type of savings. As a matter of fact, any budget that it is that goes through, and I don't know what it is that the board is going to decide and what it is that the community is going to do. One of the things that we did not talk about is that what is going to be the rolling deficit based off of what budget is actually put forth. Are you going to find yourself in a situation that whatever budget it is that you put forward, then the following year, you're not going to end up being in a deficit again? And how many more teachers, how many more staff members can you possibly lose? Both of the contingency budget and going with the budget that it is that goes up to the cap. The reality and the simple fact of the matter is that it's not going to move us forward as a district. That's just is what it is. And people are going to have to be okay with that. They're going to have to be okay with understanding that, yes, we are going to vote on a budget, and we're going to understand that it's not going to move us forward. There has to be something that is put in place that is going to allow us to move forward and put us in a better position. And getting rid of more teachers is not the answer. We're not going to be able to keep and attract the ones that it is that we have if we already gotten rid of most of them, and then we are going to increase class sizes, and you can't negotiate it in contracts, and you're cutting sports and any other extracurricular activities that anyone is going to do. How are you going to keep teachers in a teaching shortage when other districts have more resources and have better incentives? So that's really what it is that it comes down to. I'm not saying what it is that I am a proponent of, but I'm actually speaking to the reality. The one thing that it is that I wish that happened right now was that you explained to the community exactly what it was that they were going to get by doing this, right? I mean, the conversation shouldn't really be focused on just one building. What is the community going to get versus what it is that they want? You know, a novice person sitting here listening to the contingency budget, it kind of almost sounds like, all right, well, you can survive, right? That's what it kind of sounds like. But in actuality, you can't, because those are things that are allowable. Allowable doesn't mean that you can afford to do it. We can't approve a budget that's only going to put us in a deficit. And whether that deficit comes in dollars or whether that deficit comes in people, that's what it is that we're going to be faced with. Bringing in other programs, rethinking what it is that we've done with Northeast. That is really a pathway with us moving forward, in addition to being able to put ourselves in a better fiscal standing. So you have an opportunity to potentially bring in programs. And even if you can't bring in those programs right now, at this moment, you can still set yourself up to bring those programs in at another time. And maybe that's really what the goal is, to bring those programs in. If you get rid of Northeast in its totality, then you may not even put yourself in a position where you can do that. And not having a universal pre-K, which some districts do not have, understandably, that really impacts Amityville in terms of the people who come in here come to this community for that particular service. So I'm not just advocating for my teachers, I'm not just advocating for staff and keeping that building open. It's what it is, the value that it brings to the community as a whole. And yes, it is a business, but it's about the kids too. And they are going to be the ones who are ultimately impacted by this decision.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry, I just got here, so I don't know if this was covered. I just have a couple of quick questions. If you go onto a contingency budget, does Northeast stay open or it doesn't? I probably missed that. It would close?
It closes.
And is the pre-K eliminated? Or would that move over to Northwest? Or is
The pre-K would be eliminated.
both of it? Okay. I did ask, I sent you an email earlier. You talked about, I don't know if you covered this, so I apologize again. You talked about regulations that would need to be in place for Northeast to go to Northwest, but I didn't know what those regulations, I don't know what they are, and I wanted to know the time frame on the waiver that you're waiting on.
I did. I responded to your email, but it was late this evening.
Oh, okay, so I probably missed.
So I wanted to clarify, I have not requested a formal waiver. I've had conversations with state officials regarding the regulations and compliance in moving over. So what I sent you was a screenshot, so to speak, of the regulations for UPK.
Can you like sum it up? Like what are the
Well,
regulations?
The classrooms have to be a certain square footage. Bathrooms can be in or near the classrooms.
Do we meet any of these regulations or we don't meet them at all?
Yes, we do.
We meet most of them or all of them? Because like, why would we need a waiver then?
I didn't request a formal waiver. I called to inquire, did we need a waiver?
Oh, did we need a waiver,
Yes.
but we don't need a waiver now?
To my knowledge, we don't need a waiver.
Okay, because that was
Yes.
confusing to me. Okay,
Well,
thank you so
good, I'm
much.
glad we
Heard it. Did you talk about needing a supermajority vote for piercing the tax cap? You covered that?
Yes, that was covered in the presentation.
Thank you. Financial consultant, Mr. Frazier's been valuable. What is happening with a financial consultant? I know that it was approved to $15,000, 100 hours for $150. Did we go over that yet, or are there plans to keep him? What is the situation with that?
I agree with you, Mr. Frazier has been indeed valuable. His skill set, his insight and expertise has been phenomenal in our thought processes and some practices. And as we are implementing internal controls, We have not superseded the hours as of yet, but we are getting very close.
Okay, and, you know, in listening to a couple of these community meetings and board meetings, the overwhelming response is really that, as, the union president said before, it's like know your community, right? So the community is saying, they need this, this is valuable to families. I don't envy your situation right now. It's a tough situation. I don't think there's a magic answer. I think it's a tough situation for everybody. Everybody. So, with the line by line budget, I know when we went through that, and I know that you said you took $1 million out of the budget, but even in reviewing the budget that was given to the community, there are some things that could be trimmed. And, you know, small trimmings can sometimes add up to a chunk. Will the board be going back to review that to see where you, like, I'm gonna give you an example. So, you know, the warrior name, I know there was a lot of talk about that. And some of the things said, remove, replace. Well, I don't know that you necessarily have to replace a wing screen right now. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things you can cut out. While it's minimal to the 4.6, I think some things you can take out of there. And I just want to go back to this energy performance contract. I read it again, guys. I read it again. 30-day termination. There's $1 million in the budget. It does say that you have to pay for any work that was done prior to a termination. I get that. Is it not prudent to perhaps have council pursue that to see if it's cheaper to get out of that contract to free up some money, because it's $8.2 million. It's a big project. Times are up, right? Mr. Hell is shaking his head. Oh, you did do that? And council said no?
So
You said you
what,
can't?
what we can do is that we can always re-ask the question again, but it was discussed and that there was a figure that was provided. I don't know the number off the top of my head from.
But you know what I'm saying, like, it might be
Yeah.
cheaper to get out of it than to pay the
It,
million.
it doesn't hurt to ask the question again to see where we're at now.
But you want to know something? Okay, I have something to say that it was $500,000 to get out of the energy performance contract. There's $1 million in there in this budget. Take the $500,000 hit, you just free up $500,000.
So what I will ask is that if we could just look at it again and get the exact number to where we're at right now, because those numbers were discussed several months ago, so I'm not too sure where we're at currently, so we can
Understood.
get the correct number then.
But you understand, right? At 500,000, you're freeing up 500,000. I'm sure I have more to say, but I don't know right now. So I'm just gonna leave it at that. And the only other thing is, and I know moving forward, you said like you would have more community meetings earlier. And I mean, I think that there's been value in there. I think people need to feel heard. I really appreciate there's not a buzzer going off right now. It's more of an easy conversation, and actually that the tension I feel is not really there right now. And it's a nice feeling that everybody can feel at ease when we're discussing. So I do wish that it was earlier, because the community has had some pretty good ideas for you guys. And, you know, there's value in the community too. A lot of people thinking together. To go back, did you discuss the 1.3 million again?
Yes, that was,
What was the answer? I apologize.
so. Do you want me to give it to you?
Is it,
Dr.
I mean, if you could do it in a nutshell, I don't want to waste everybody's time. Is it being reviewed, or is it just something you decided?
It is being further reviewed. We talked about some of the additional expenses that the district will incur in getting out of the $1.3 million commitment. We talked about some of the health and safety issues at the middle school outside of the bathrooms. So it does warrant us to go back again, further discuss it, and give it a further analysis.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I
Any
make a
other questions?
comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Castro, you actually brought up a really good point about the supermajority, because when you made your presentation, Ms. Palazzi, it really wasn't clarified to the community about a supermajority. So I really think that's very important.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me clarify. If the budget, if we have to pierce the cap, we need a supermajority. If we are going to keep Northwest open, which requires Northeast open, and we have to put back Either the 1.7 million dollars, the $2.8 million that was discussed earlier, that will require a supermajority, which is 60% of our resident voters plus one. That is a supermajority. And thank you, Trustee Siegel, for bringing it to my attention.
Any other questions from the community or comments?
Hi, Faith Robinson, 21 Town Street. I just wanted to get clarification on two of the slides, just because we were chatting about it and it was confusing. So for Oyster Bay, on the tax rate for $100 of assessed value sign, it says home assessed at 362. And then on the town of Babylon, it says home assessed at 3,940. What does that number represent? Is that a dollar amount? Is that?
No, it is a percentage of the value of the property. And in Nassau County, they assess a home at 0.1 of 1%. And in the past, they used to do 25%, they scale it back to 10%. And the reason why Nassau County continued to do that is that there's a law which says that you can't raise somebody's assessment by more than 5%.
Okay.
So by doing that, they were able to increase the assessed value of properties in Nassau County.
Okay, but you keep saying the 0.1%, but 0.1% isn't listed on the slide, so that's confusing. So is
No, that is-
362 representative of 0.1%?
Of
Of
the home's full value.
So $362?
Assessment is a number that is attached to a home based on the value of that property. So that means if you take 362 and divide it by 0.1, more or less what you're saying is that that home is valued at $362,000.
Okay, but so then town of Babylon, you have 3,940.
Correct, because they assess differently from Nassau County. Every jurisdiction has its own way of assessing value for the purposes of tax.
Okay, and then so where you say 2,521.622 for 100 of assessment.
Correct.
What does that 100 represent?
Okay.
Is that a dollar value? Is that?
No, it's a number that is used to determine the taxes. You have to determine the tax rate. The tax rate at this point is the most important number. The tax rate is the real tax rate for the 23-24 school year for the town of Oyster Bay. So in order to determine if somebody, somebody who lives in the town of Oyster Bay, East Massapequa, you can find out how much they pay in school taxes by taking the 2521 and multiply it by the assessed value. And the way you get that is take the tax rate of 2521, take the assessed value. In this case, I use 362. Because it's $100 per $100 per 1,000 of assessed value. You move the decimal point to 3.62 and multiply by the tax rate.
So
That's exactly
can I just interrupt for a second, because I don't mean to be rude, but I'm lost.
Good at math,
Yes,
but,
it is a very difficult concept to understand.
I think this is just, no, you continue just 1 second, but on those two slides,
we were
it's
just trying to figure out how you got to the math.
exactly. So
Yes.
this is just an example of two different households. I think what would be very helpful for the community is just in general, like on April 10th, when you did the presentation, you had said that roughly that it may increase roughly a certain amount, I think, for option number one, where we stayed at 3.077%. You had
Right,
said
that's
that
like 5.8.
roughly it was going to be 306 for Oyster Bay and roughly 326. So I think this is a great example, but it gets a little confusing because
It is-
someone may look at it and say, well, that means based on what you're saying, it's only gonna go up X amount of dollars. But in reality, if I think it was just sort of a general number, that roughly, that it may go up in the town of Babylon roughly about 326 and roughly about 306 for the town of Oyster Bay if we stayed at the 3.077%. So giving examples are nice, but I think that trying to calculate out the numbers and whatnot, it's very confusing. Like you, I'm pretty decent in math, but I need to calculate and figure this all out.
Yeah.
But I think people want to know really how is my taxes going to be impacted?
Okay.
What will it be? And you gave
Okay.
examples of 2 households, but I think going back to the April 10th and just saying roughly, it's going to be,
Yeah.
it's going to be that.
I'm happy you brought that up because when I did the average, there were some people who came back to me and said it didn't reflect exactly what was going on. That's why I decided to give this option, which shows exactly what people pay. And so the tax rate times the assessed value was what they were looking for. So some people opted for that. That's why I decided to do this one.
Okay. I'm sorry, keep going.
No, that's okay. And then I just wanted to go back to Northeast because, I go back and forth, like, I mean, at the end of the day, is it just dollars a day that we, are paying in taxes to keep a building open? Is the enrollment what it was, 6 years ago? And, it is a hard place to be, in this town, in this current state, but I think that Northeast is more than just pre-K. It's jobs and it's people's lives but it's also such a huge part of like the North Amityville community. And it's like the only school that a majority of these kids who go to Amityville see in their neighborhood. Like there's a playground there for them to play in. There's a field that they can play in. And if we close it and it becomes something that they can no longer use, or, it becomes abandoned if it's just something we sell and nothing happens to it, it doesn't become a place that is looked at as something that the community is proud of. And so I think it is a very hard decision, but I think we have to think about the impact to the community of kids who go there and who've been there and who play there in the summer, play there on the weekend. And also it's like the only opportunity for a majority of our kids who live in that part of the neighborhood to be a walker, to have that experience of seeing their school in their neighborhood, whereas like everywhere else they have to be bused and they probably don't go to a lot. So it is a hard decision, and I have no idea what's going to happen, and I hope we come up with the best possible option, but I think we also have to think about what it means to the community just as a landmark itself.
Thank you. Any other community input?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for again listening to the community for these matters. But I really have a hard time with these decks of these presentations because they're just really confusing. And to that past to Faith's point is a lot of these numbers, like if you could just put a glossary or an asterisk and say what this represents and put the formula on the page or do a fact sheet at the back to know what we're talking about on page 10. This is the formula. This is what we're trying to represent, because it is very confusing. You wasted a half hour just going back and forth between town of Babylon and the town and Oyster Bay when it could just be a side-by-side presentation. It was totally slow and totally ridiculous, and then very confusing. But and then in the contingency budget, you list all these things that are allowable. And what really irks me is that you put in the school lunch program when in fact we all know that they get free breakfast and lunch. So you're putting in all this filler, thinking like, I just don't understand your mentality of how you present these decks and who's proofreading them and if the average person is looking at this, and I'm going to go home and try to figure this out, there's no notation. Unless I'm taking notes, it's very confusing to the average person. Obviously we just talked about how confusing it is. I just don't understand how you go about all of this. It's really, and if you could do a glossary, it's late in the game now because it pushes, we're right at the end. So long story short, if you can really think long and hard about how you present this to the community with real numbers and real facts and formulas and a glossary or fact sheet or whatever you're trying to present here, it would be a great help. And don't
Thank
put
you.
stuff in, I'm not done.
No, I'm just saying thank you for your comment. That's it. I'm not cutting you off.
Okay. And the other thing was when Ms. Talbot, Dr. Talbot spoke about the walkthrough and you're seeing if this northeast, what the square footage and X amount of dollars per month and so on and so forth. And you said you were having conversations with another entity for the possibility of getting a revenue stream for this building. But is this a full building provided for this revenue stream, or you're saying a shared space?
So we would be proposing a shared space.
Okay. Big red flag. What kind of entity are you dealing with? If you're having school-age children, what's going to be next door in the shared space?
School-age children,
It has to be apples
children
to
of the
apples.
same age.
Are they same age and same, okay. Now, could my also on the question, you said in a year we generate X revenue stream from this whole thing. If that was the case, if we went there and you did this proposal and it works out to the favor of you doing whatever, and you're saying in a year we could hopefully not have pierce the tax cap the following budget, the following year, right? But if you put a deadline on this revenue stream and said it can't be like that forever, to get it back, to bring it back to your own. Like you can't just do this all forever. You can't share the space forever. If you want to bring it back and bring it all back home, you get your revenue stream, you do whatever it takes, you pull up your bootstraps, you trim the fat in every shape and form, do what you have to do, but put a deadline on it and say, we're not going to let this go on. We're not going to be pigs. We're going to just take the money. We're going to put it back into the budget. We're going to bring it back home and we're going to make this place whole. Would you propose a deadline so that we're not just running and running and running?
I think it's something that we'll have to look at year by year. Of course, we would have to enter into a contract for a said time, whatever that negotiated agreement would be. But I think as we're looking at our revenue, we're looking at our expenditures, we're looking at fiscal solvency, all of that would play into the time frame as to when we would wean ourselves off of that other revenue source.
I mean, because money is hard to give up, believe me.
Well, we just want to be responsible and good stewards, and I think that would come with an analysis of each year. Where are we as a district? And where are we with this program as to when we could release it?
Okay. And I do have another question regarding the budgetary issues and the audit and all that other stuff. And basically the first audit was done basically saying that there were very loose controls, if not any, i.e. the security budget. I am still wrapping my head around how it went to, I'm gonna say probably the wrong number, but like $59,000 to $400,000. I am still trying to wrap my head around that one line item. How it went from X to X. I mean, I get it, but something is so rotten on that line that it's scary. And no one has verbalized what happened. It's like, yeah, we just put security at every game. We put security at every door. It doesn't go from $50,000 or whatever the number was. I forget the number. I apologize for that. To over almost $500,000 inside of a year. That should be a whole meeting in itself. Like where is that explanation? No one has said jack about that. Nothing, except it went up and we got to pay it. And now we're in a deficit.
If I may comment on the security at large. So even present, there is a set amount set aside for security for this year, 23-24. We are monitoring every line of that security budget. Even in monitoring that line, we are having to rein in to stay under the budget Now, why is that? That is because we're doing great things, but these great things involve safety measures such as having security on site. So night events have to be budgeted. We can't just decide we're going to do 5 parent nights at, just say, Northeast. Those 5 parent nights have to be budgeted with security. If we're doing community events or Saturday events, that has to be budgeted with security. Now, we are understanding that you can only budget so much, so you have to be mindful of your usage. And so we are weighing the balances on that now. We're analyzing that. We're looking at that, what's necessary, what's essential, and we're having to make decisions on some things we need to cut back. At one of the community meetings, we talked about the wonderful stream program at Northeast. It's a grant-funded program. We all wanted it. We hear the students love it, they enjoy it, but we had to put it on pause for just a moment because we had to calculate our security costs, our custodial costs, and ensure for the duration that we're running that program that our general funds could absorb the part that's not covered by the grants. So we hear you loud and clear, and it is a line item that has to be carefully monitored.
But it's mind-boggling. How did it go from X to X? I can't, for the life of me, I can't figure that out. I mean, even if it was doubled, it would be mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I just don't get that. And my last and third final question is, now, we're talking about, different grants and such. Along the line, I'm sure that there are grants that you probably never applied for because you probably could have paid for stuff, or I'm thinking, are there special grants out there that apply to a situation that we're in need of? Meaning, you probably never went that direction before. I'm trying to make you people think out of the box and try to really grab what's available to this community. So I'm saying, like, and I know that the one-for-one, the dollar-to-dollar grants and things that we can't, if we don't have the money for, we can't get the grant because you don't have it to cover that whole one-to-one or whatever it's called. I get all that. But are there grants out there that would cover intramural sports, that are grants out there that are gonna, there's specific things like who's doing their homework on the grants that we've never, ever applied for? There's gotta be other things out there that there was no real need for it, so you never really looked for it, is what I'm saying. Those are the types of things that you're gonna grasp little by little, incremental, little things make big chunks, like I said, like someone said, but those are the types of things that we need right now. We have to get every hour possible of all you people collectively working to figure this out as best possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Nearing, 22 Cedar Street. As the parent of 2 children that go to the middle school 5 days a week and stay for extracurriculars, what are the current health risks from the bathrooms, that situation that's going on there? Because I was hearing that when they're part of the project to fix the bathrooms, that there's health risks involved with it.
Go ahead, Dr. Talbot.
So I'm going to have to refer to Ms. Buatsi, but health and safety in terms of ensuring the building is up to code, we are compliant, that the building is operating as it should according to regulations. Ms.
Yeah.
Buatsi.
Every year we do what is called every 5 years we do what is called building condition survey. And I think it was in last July that our architects came and did a presentation and showed us what should be and what we have currently in those buildings. Even the lighting itself is something that we are trying to address. The ceiling. When we had the accident, the freeze last December, it exposed a lot of things because the HVAC system has been there for over 50 years. Those are some of the things that I was alluding to, because it is very important that we upgrade some of those systems, because we never know what's going to happen. And that is part of this project.
So it's not that there's anything
No,
causing any issues from that?
no.
Okay. So it's nothing that immediately needs to physically be done. It's just a matter of that you already had a contract and with the
No, I
agency?
mean, from what we experienced last December, not this December, the past one, when the pipe burst, there was a lot that we had to fix, and we're lucky that the insurance company covered it for us. The fear is that if it should happen again, the insurance company will say, we told you so. And so we have to be proactive and work on fixing some of these issues that has been there for years and has not been addressed.
So, Ms.
It's
Bawak,
vulnerable.
so Ms. Bawaksi, to his question regards to the bathroom, when it comes to the bathroom in the middle school, the bathrooms are the same bathrooms that have been existing since basically the building has been open. So as things got broken, you replace the toilet, you replace the door, you replace different things, but it has not been upgraded to the current standards like ADA requirements and stuff like that. So that's what's referring to. So as things got broken, they've been fixed, but they have not been upgraded to like a newer bathroom. So that's
But
what's,
just Band-Aids put on?
yes, been Band-Aids put on throughout the years, yes.
Okay. And then there's no way to just pause that for a year, like even just do the same exact project a year later just to save that money for this budget coming up?
So right now, everything has gone up to New York State. We're waiting for their approval. So when it comes back, what we would have, if, for example, a decision is made by the board to take that, the 1.3, if we want to take that back, we could do that. In doing that, we still would have to go back to the community to say that the other 2.5 that was put there previously, that the community said, okay, we approved this 2.5 for capital projects. And then last year when we did it, we said, okay, we approved the 2.5 that was done the year before, and now you're going to take the money and do the following projects. Because the community voted on those projects, now we have to go back to the community and say, well, we don't have, like, say, $4 million. All we have is $2 million. This is the scope of work that we would have to do. So could it be refined? Could we redo something differently? Yes, we can, but we cannot do it without the voter approval because the voters approved for us to do a certain project. So that's what would happen. So could it be paused? Yes, it could be paused, but it has to be with permission of the community.
Right. And are any of those upgrades needed? Is that like for handicapped students that aren't able to use the bathrooms now because of how it's set up?
So yeah, there are some facilities.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
President Johnson, can I tag on that for a second? And maybe Dave can also elaborate too, but when that side of the building burst, when those pipes burst, the real issue was that PSE&G was doing some energy efficiency test where they weren't pumping full electricity to the buildings. And that caused poor circulation in those pipes, caused them to freeze and burst. I mean, isn't that your understanding, Dave? So I mean, if that's your understanding, I don't know why we're not going after PSEG to get reimbursed, number one. But number two, it should also show the insurance agency that we weren't at fault. I mean, I don't know how long these pipes last.
I've mentioned this a couple of times that, yeah, I mean, I know Olivia brings up the fact that the insurance companies may look at us partially to say that we didn't upgrade because something happened on the west side of the building immediately means we have to do something on the east side of the building. Well, that's not the case. The insurance company could never deny us a claim when the claim on the west side was because of a frozen pipe. And yes, it was because National Grid, PSE&G had cut back on the amount of power that went into the school at that time. Our circulators didn't move the water fast enough. The pipes froze and broke. When the pipes froze and broke, we uncovered a lot of older pipes. We saw that, you know, the conditions are not the greatest. The building opened up in 1963. I happen to know, I was the first class in there. And yeah, so it is old. You know, our high school is old. Northeast is old. Park Avenue is old. Yeah, we have old schools. We have old plumbing, old HVAC equipment and so forth. And each year you try to upgrade, you try to take the most important projects and put them forward. Do we have to do, middle school right now? No, not necessarily. We did put 2.5 billion aside 2.5 years ago. Then we added on to it 1.7 to even do more work at the middle school. So, this project is something that we hope to begin in the next year or two. We're not going to start it this year. Everybody knows that. We've sent the plans, the initial plans up to, to be approved by New York State. And we haven't heard anything back from them yet. So yeah, I mean, if we can put this project on hold for at least another 16 to 18 months before we start, that's what we're gonna have to do. We don't have the funds right now to jump into. So yeah, there's a lot of different contributing factors. But as far as safety, no, the buildings are safe, the bathrooms are safe. Yes, they're old, but they are functioning. We don't have any hazardous materials that we're concerned about in the bathrooms. Everybody knows we've done things with flooring and so forth and so on, and we continue to do those projects. So safety is the most important thing as far as we're concerned for the children. So.
Hi, so this happens to be my wheelhouse since I'm an insurance broker. The insurance paid for the damage. If PSE&G was responsible, they would subrogate against PSE&G. They are excellent. Okay. But that's no skin off of you. They'll just go after that. The other thing is, it's interesting. I've heard this narrative before that, they came in and if we don't do these things, they're not going to cover us. I foiled for the loss controls, which an insurance company would give if they had to tell you that you had to fix something to become into compliance. None existed when I foiled that. So I want to dispel that narrative, that that's not really what's going on here. There's a difference between a want and a need. I think Mr. Heller, you just kind of talked about that. Other schools do have bathrooms that are original, and I think everybody would want a new bathroom, and we want things to be upgraded facilities. We definitely want that. It doesn't mean that it has to be. I mean, it's a want, it's a need, and through time. In the middle of a financial crisis, I don't think it's the time, as you said. The only other new piece of information is you said we all know that it wasn't going to happen this year. I didn't know that. I don't know if anybody else knew that. That's the first time I'm hearing that. I mean, obviously now with the crisis, we're not going to do that. Yeah.
Well,
Mr. Heller, just let her finish, please.
Well, I was just gonna say.
No,
just-
that's okay.
Just so you know that once you have a set of plans, okay, and we go over whatever we're looking to do, and then that all has to be sent to the state. Well, the state doesn't move that quickly. So
I know,
we
there's
got
only like
this
2
in.
people up there.
Yeah, so, it's been up there for a while, and because that's happened, this is a project that has to be done primarily over the summer.
Right.
Okay, so obviously, we can't do it this summer, so yes, it would have to be put off. So regardless of even financial restraints, it couldn't have been done this year.
Okay, so if I may, just as a community member, it would have been helpful if that was conveyed to us. Just to be realistic, it's not going to happen over the summer. I know that we've had a community member that's asked multiple times at just about every meeting. It's helpful if you tell us these things. We don't know what we don't know unless you tell us, right? The other thing about security that somebody brought up, I do know that this was brought up, $150,000 to supervise the soccer games. Guys, that's crazy. That's not even possible, right? So there are some issues, I know with the controls there, with the security, the overtime, there were no timesheets. I mean, games, you have 2 supervisors. If there's too many people, like we can't just be giving out these supervisor positions like candy. Like how many do we need? And I think you're doing that now. You're really like watching it. But that was so out of control. Like when I heard that, I almost fell off my chair. The last thing that I just want to bring up is I was looking through this really quickly, and you're using $362,000 as the assessed value. I got to ask where you came from with that number from, because like the assessed values of homes are really high. Mine is extremely higher than that number. So when you look at this handout, that isn't even gonna come close to what the reality is of what I would pay. And I know there's a difference in everybody's, value and whatever their home is, but I just want to understand why 362 is used. It's an extremely low number.
It is an address for someone that I know. That's why I use it. It is an existing address.
No, with all due respect, right? I think if you would compare the different homes or do a sampling from all over Amityville and East Massapequa, I could almost assure you that 362 is extremely low. I feel like we could have done better with that, like to have a more realistic number. Just because when somebody's looking at this, when I look at this, I just think that number is gonna like triple for me. That's it. Oh, and you're gonna adopt on Tuesday, is that correct?
On the 23rd, yes.
So at that point, when will we know about the energy performance or the capital reserve? If you're gonna do these things, when would we know? Would we know at that meeting? How would we find that out?
So I took a note on the back here, and I will talk to Dr. Talbot after the meeting, and maybe what we can do is put those responses up on the website. I'll talk to her
Yeah.
or email. one of
Yeah,
them.
like it would be good if we knew, and also if you could announce it at that meeting so the community knows, just where we're at. That would be helpful. And, okay, I mean, the last thing I just want to say is, I know you're saying you have to pierce the tax cap, and I'm so happy to pay. If somebody's so happy to pay, they should really pay my taxes. Because I'll send you my bill, that's fine. All kidding aside, I think you have to be like really serious to understand the likelihood of a pierced tax cap passing is not in your favor. Everybody's shaking. I guess everybody realizes that. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ken Egan, yesterday I'd asked, I know it's just yesterday that we all spoke, is there a threshold that you think parents would pay for half a daycare day or half a pre-K day? Yesterday in the meeting, we brought up, if you change the pre-K to half a day and then let the parents decide to pay for a second half, could it be a way to generate a little bit of funds and soften the amount that it costs to run? I know it was just yesterday, I know you have to get back to us, but
Yes. Was that just yesterday?
no, I think it was yesterday.
Yes,
It's been a long week.
Yes, so we are looking at, sliding scale payments
Mhm.
for parents, particularly for before and after school. The question is still hanging as to whether or not we could offer a half day and allow parents to pay for the other half of the day. If that was your question,
Yeah,
correct?
that is it.
So that's the question that's still hanging. We've not received a confirmation on that as of yet, but the inquiry has been made.
Yeah, and just to fill everything, it's so expensive for, daycares and pre-K and all those things. If the parent's gonna have to pay 1,200 or 1,400 a month versus 400 a month or something, is there some way that it lands in the middle? And that also goes the same thing for any of the sports and clubs. What's the threshold and what are the participants' families willing to pay? Because we know that we're in the situation we're in. Do they have an extra $30 or $20? Not that I assume that we do, but what's the comfortable threshold of having those conversations and delivering it in a way saying, hey, we'd like to keep these going, we can't. So I think just that dialogue should start and that copy should be written just so you all have an idea of maybe a way to keep those programs going, keep the enrichment going while still not messing up the whole thing, just as a concept.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point in time, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:26? So moved. Carol Seahawk is first. Dave Hill is second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you for coming out.